You know, most folks just see cardboard as something to throw away, but there's a whole lot more to it than meets the eye. It can actually be one of the quickest, cheapest ways to build rich, healthy soil right in your own backyard. Let's dig into why this overlooked material can make all the difference in your garden. Most gardeners are throwing away one of the fastest soil-building materials they already have, then turning around and buying compost that works slower and costs money. Cardboard. It's treated like trash, burned or dumped, while beds stay compacted, lifeless, and full of weeds. That mistake keeps soil biology starved, locks up nutrients, and forces you into a cycle of constant inputs just to keep plants alive. I've run side-by-side beds with and without cardboard, in heavy clay, sandy patches, and even in raised systems where soil had gone dead from overuse. The difference isn't subtle. When cardboard is used correctly, you're not just adding organic matter, you're building a fungal network that changes how the entire soil system functions. And yes, you can turn it into usable compost material in about 60 days if you understand what actually drives decomposition. This is not about tossing boxes into a pile and hoping for the best. It's about controlling moisture, carbon balance, and microbial access, so breakdown happens fast and clean. Let's start with why cardboard works better than most people think it should. Cardboard is almost pure carbon, but it's not like wood chips or dry leaves. It's processed plant fiber that has already been broken down once, which makes it easier for fungi to colonize. Fungi are what you want if you're serious about long-term soil structure. Bacteria break things down fast, but fungi build networks, stabilize aggregates, and improve nutrient exchange with plant roots. When you lay cardboard into a moist environment and give it just enough nitrogen to balance it, fungi move in aggressively. You'll often see white mycelium within a week if conditions are right. That's not something you get as quickly with traditional compost piles unless you're managing them very actively. But here's where most people get it wrong and end up saying cardboard takes forever to break down. They leave it dry, or they bury it without enough nitrogen, or they stack it too thick without airflow. In those conditions, it can sit there for months doing very little. If you want 60-day breakdown, you have to create the right environment from day one. So let's talk about how to actually do that in a real garden. Alright, so here's how you do it, step by step. First, you want to clear the area of any big debris or weeds. Lay your cardboard flat, making sure to overlap the edges so there aren't any gaps. Next, wet the cardboard thoroughly. Don't be shy, it should be soaked. Then, add a layer of high nitrogen material like grass clippings or fresh manure right on top. This is what's going to feed the microbes and get things breaking down fast. After that, cover everything with a few inches of mulch, like wood chips or straw. This keeps the moisture in and helps the fungi and bacteria do their thing. Finally, keep an eye on moisture. If it dries out, give it a good soak. If you follow these steps, you'll be amazed at how quickly that cardboard disappears and how much better your soil will be. If you're working in a backyard bed, the fastest method I've tested is what I call a controlled layering trench. You're not composting in a pile, you're composting in place where the material will actually be used. Start by soaking your cardboard completely. Not just damp, but soaked. I usually submerge it in a drum or bucket for a few hours. Dry cardboard repels microbes at first, but wet cardboard invites them immediately. Then lay it flat on the soil surface or just slightly below, depending on your setup. If you're dealing with compacted soil, just lay it directly on top. That layer will smother weeds, hold moisture, and create a soft interface where roots can eventually push through. Now, here's the part that determines whether it breaks down in 60 days or 6 months. You need nitrogen. For every layer of cardboard, you want a layer of nitrogen-rich material that's roughly half its thickness. That can be fresh grass clippings, kitchen scraps, manure, or even diluted urine if you're comfortable using it. In my own beds, I've used a mix of grass clippings and rabbit manure at about a 2-to-1 ratio by volume, and breakdown is consistently fast. The idea is to bring the carbon to nitrogen ratio into a range where microbes can work efficiently. Cardboard alone is just too carbon heavy. When you balance it, decomposition accelerates dramatically. Once you've layered cardboard and nitrogen, you want to cover it with a thin layer of soil, or finished compost, about 2 to 5 centimeters thick. This does two things really. First, it inoculates the cardboard with microbes, and second, it locks in moisture. Moisture is non-negotiable here. The entire stack should feel like a wrung-out sponge, just damp enough. If it dries out, the process slows down immediately. In warm conditions, especially in places where many of you are gardening, like tropical or subtropical climates, you'll start seeing softening within about 2 weeks. By 30 days, the cardboard loses its structure, and by 60 days, it's no longer recognizable as cardboard. It's integrated right into the soil as organic matter. Now, let's talk a bit about some specialized applications for this method. There are all sorts of ways you can adapt and use it to fit your own garden's needs, whether you're dealing with heavy clay, trying to suppress weeds, or even starting a new planting bed from scratch. It's a flexible, reliable approach that works just about anywhere you need to build healthy soil. Now let's talk about raised beds, because the approach is just a bit different. In raised beds, especially the ones that have been reused for several seasons, you often get something called stratification. The top looks fine, but right underneath, the soil is compacted and pretty biologically inactive. This is where cardboard really shines. Instead of mixing everything in, you can actually create a vertical compost layer. So, here's what you do. Remove about 10 to 15 centimeters of topsoil, lay down some soaked cardboard, add your nitrogen layer, and then return the soil on top. What happens is that the decomposition zone sits right below your root zone. As it breaks down, it feeds microbes upward into the active growing layer. Plants respond quickly to this because roots naturally grow toward areas of higher biological activity. I've done this with tomatoes and peppers, and, well, you can actually see the difference in root density when you dig down later. The roots follow the decomposing cardboard layer because that's where the life is. Hydroponic growers might think this doesn't apply, but there's a crossover here that's worth understanding. If you're running hydroponics and also maintaining a soil system, cardboard compost can be used to produce a fungal-rich extract. Once the cardboard is partially decomposed, around the 30 to 45 day mark, you can take a handful of that material, steep it in water for 24 hours, and use that liquid as a biological inoculant. It's not a nutrient solution, it's a microbial boost. In systems where root health is critical, that kind of inoculation can help suppress pathogens and improve resilience. When we talk about using cardboard in gardening, safety and sustainability are always on my mind. You want to make sure the cardboard is free of heavy inks, coatings, or any kind of plastic. Sticking with plain brown cardboard is the safest bet. It breaks down cleanly and supports the soil food web without introducing anything harmful. Plus, by reusing cardboard, you're keeping waste out of landfills and closing the loop on materials that would otherwise just get tossed. It's a small step, but it really adds up over time and helps create a more sustainable garden system. Now let's address a question that always comes up. Is cardboard safe for vegetable gardens? In my experience, plain brown cardboard without heavy printing, glossy coatings, or wax is completely safe. Most of it is held together with starch-based adhesives. I avoid heavily inked or laminated pieces because you just don't know what's in those coatings. If you stick to simple, uncoated cardboard, you're basically adding processed plant fiber back into the soil. I've used it in beds growing leafy greens, root crops, and fruiting plants without any negative effects at all. Another question folks ask is whether this can replace compost entirely. Well, short answer, no. But it can reduce how much compost you need by quite a significant margin. Cardboard-based composting builds structure and feeds fungi, which is something most traditional compost piles don't do as effectively unless they're managed really carefully. But you still need diversity in your organic inputs. Kitchen scraps, plant residues, and other materials bring in nutrients that cardboard alone doesn't provide. So, just think of cardboard as a backbone material. It really builds the framework of your soil. Then, you layer in other organic matter to fill in the nutritional gaps. There's also a trade-off worth mentioning. If you overuse cardboard without enough nitrogen, you can temporarily tie up nutrients, especially nitrogen, as microbes work to break it down. This usually shows up as slower plant growth or even pale leaves. It's not a permanent problem, but it's a sign your balance is off. The fix is simple though. Just add more nitrogen-rich material, or use a quick-release source like diluted urine or a light application of compost tea. Once the system balances, plant growth rebounds quickly. One of the biggest advantages of this method is weed suppression. A well-laid cardboard layer blocks light completely. Weed seeds don't germinate, and existing weeds die off underneath. So, as you can see, this approach really offers a bunch of benefits for gardeners looking for a more sustainable way to manage weeds and improve their soil. If you're ready to give it a try, now's the perfect time to start. You'll be amazed at how quickly your garden can transform with just a little patience and the right materials. At the same time, the decomposition process turns that barrier into soil instead of leaving behind plastic or synthetic mulch. I've converted heavily weeded patches into productive beds in a single season using this approach. No digging, no herbicides, just controlled layering and patience. And the long-term benefit is something you don't see immediately. As cardboard breaks down, it contributes to humus formation. Humus is stable organic matter that holds nutrients and water in the soil. It's what separates average soil from truly productive soil. You're not just feeding plants for one season, you're building a system that gets better over time. So if you've been throwing away cardboard, you're literally discarding a soil-building resource that can improve structure, boost microbial life, suppress weeds, and reduce your need for external inputs. The difference between struggling plants and vigorous growth often comes down to what's happening below the surface. Cardboard, used correctly, shifts that balance in your favor faster than most people expect. If you start now, you can have fully integrated organic matter in about 60 days and a noticeably improved soil system within one growing cycle. That's not theory. That's what I've seen repeatedly in real beds under real conditions. If you want more practical methods like this that actually change how your garden performs, subscribe to Gardening Simplified and share this with someone who's still throwing away cardboard. The more people who understand how to build soil properly, the better food we all grow.